small businesses and Small Business Britain. But crucially, it also includes small business leaders, and I'm pleased that Thomas Robson-Kanu and many of our council members are in the audience today. We've just heard from the Prime Minister about what the government is doing to support small business. My department is playing its part too. Last year, we invited applications from companies to temporarily suspend tariffs on key imports that you need, from chemicals to ceramics to fruit and vegetables. And today, I can confirm, we've accepted over 150 applications for new suspensions. This is a big boost for companies of all sizes, and we're reducing the cost of these imports for their business. We also want homegrown companies to compete with the best of the best in the global market. And that starts with ensuring that every small business owner feels capable and confident in using cutting-edge digital technology. It's why my department recently announced a new digital adoption task force, helping SMEs to supercharge their productivity by using all the new digital tools that are there at our fingertips. And in support of that effort today, I am announcing the chair of that task force will be Phil Smith. Phil brings with him a wealth of experience as the chairman of IQE, the former head of Cisco, and the chair of Innovate UK. Just 20 minutes down the road at the Coventry Transport Museum is the Thrust SSC. It's the British-built vehicle that holds the land speed record that has stood for 25 years. And sitting alongside it is the Bloodhound LSR, the latest machine hoping to break that record. If you talk to the engineers working on these marvels of manufacturing, they'll tell you that as important as improving the size of the engine is reducing drag, the friction that slows the vehicle down, reduces its range and wears it out. And as an engineer myself, I know that this principle applies to business too. Unlocking investment, cutting back red tape, lowering business costs to spur higher growth. That is how this government is reducing drag for SMEs in this economy so that you can go further and faster. And we want to carry on working in partnership with industry to deliver for you in this year, 2024, the year of the SME. Our ambition is to make the UK the best place in the world in which to start and grow a business. So in that spirit, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage two excellent entrepreneurs, Libby Hart, the CEO and founder of Libby London, who previously worked in the world's top investment banks, becoming a director at just 28 years old. And I'm delighted to say she is also an advisor on our board of trade, which is helping businesses from our smallest startups to our biggest brands to export more and break into new markets. And Thomas Robson-Kanu, the former Premier League footballer, Welsh international and CEO of the Turmeric Company, one of the UK's fastest growing health brands today. And thank you, everyone. Please have a seat. All right, so it's a real pleasure to have two successful entrepreneurs here talking about their experiences of setting up a growing business here in the UK, so thank you. And I hope that we'll have some time to take questions from the audience as well. But I wanted to, first of all, start by saying that as government, we understand the challenging environment that business has been operating in. If I think about when I first started in politics, had coalition governments, changes in policy, there's been Brexit, there's been COVID, a war in Europe, now a war in the Middle East, difficulties with supply chains, in the Red Sea. I think what is actually phenomenal is that our businesses are still here, are still working, thriving and growing. So it's a testament to all of you. We are not the ones who grow the economy. It's not government. It is business. It's our job to create the environment for you. And that's really what I wanted this conversation to be about. What is it that we can do? You've heard the Prime Minister talk about the things that government is doing. Things are turning around. We are doing better than competitor countries. But speaking to small business owners and entrepreneurs like yourself will be helpful, like yourselves, pardon me, will be helpful for us in terms of forming new policy. So I'll start off very briefly by asking both of you, just as an intro to the audience, to tell us more about your company's journeys and the challenges and obstacles that you have had to overcome. So we'll start with Libby and then Thomas.
So we are a women's wear label. We specialise in women's workwear. Kemi is very much target market. And we've been going for a year to keep making stuff here. So for the first 10 years, we made absolutely everything here. And even now, it's become a bit more challenging, but we still make 30% here. And I guess that's our single biggest challenge, because being able to make here makes us more attractive abroad. And that, you know, for the future, for us, that's our key selling point, really.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yes, so my father and I launched the Turmeric Company in 2018, and the premise was to bring a range of natural, health-focused turmeric shots, which were originally a family-made recipe, to market. And in order to do so, we had to become a manufacturing business as well as a brand. So not only did we have to understand the complexities of supply chain, distribution, and ultimately manufacture, we also had to understand the route to market, how we could position our brand and our product in a very saturated and confusing consumer market and really show differentiation. And we were able to do that by launching the Turmeric Company in 2018, initially as a direct consumer business, building a subscription model which scaled very successfully. But alongside that, we needed to scale our manufacture too. And so, yeah, it's been quite the journey, following a journey in elite sports, which we're very grateful for, and over a decade at the top level. But looking at, you know, business within the UK economy, when we look at it, we talk about stimulus and productivity, you know, hence the reason of the Small Business Council, you know, headed by Minister Hollerake as fantastically as he's done. And so for us now, it's about how do we really drive stimulus and drive productivity through what we're doing. And for me, I think it's about delivering champions to the UK economy. And so for us, we need to be able to champion what we're doing within our sector, but communicate that to the wider audiences to give them belief and hope as well.
All right. Thank you very much. And you've both come from different setting up your own business. And startups are one area that the government has been focusing on. Minister Hollerake, Kevin will be coming on talking a little bit more about all that we've done. But while we are here, you've got ministers across the department. You've got the CEO of the British Business Bank. I'm keen to be the voice of business in government. What's your number one priority ask of government to support UK businesses? And this might be something that we'd open up to questions later on as well. There's one thing, if you were in my shoes, there's one thing that you could do. What would it be?
I might add two things.
Yes, okay. Yes, you can have two things.
Because I've already talked about British manufacturing, and that would be my number one. Just helping those British manufacturers make a better product, help them find the skills, which the apprenticeship scheme obviously does for us. Also investing in women. You know, that female juggle, you know, trying to have children and run a business at the same time is just about impossible, it feels, at times. So helping women do that and putting pressure on bigger companies to make it easier for women to work, mothers to work.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, no, I think diversity and knowledge transfer is extremely important, and ultimately that touches a number of areas, but delivering access and availability, but the understanding that opportunity is there. The Prime Minister spoke today about that there are opportunities to support businesses through various different channels within government, but actually if you were to speak to a lot of small, medium businesses, particularly entrepreneurs, startups, the understanding that those opportunities are actually there is very few and far between. So I would say, really making the opportunities available visible and having individuals to communicate that. And I think the government is clearly taking steps to do that, hosting days like today, supporting that growth. So and that will be another positive step, because there are a lot of founders and entrepreneurs out there who will become the next generation's blue chip companies in time, but they need that support and access now.
Thank you. And I think that what you touched on in terms of the understanding that people have of what it's like to start a business, being an entrepreneur, I worry sometimes that the next generation is seeing less and less of it. People are afraid of taking risks. They don't know if they're going to have the right support. Whether it can't always be government support, sometimes it will be, but even support in their community. They see lot of charm and they think, oh, this is too difficult. So I think it's worth hearing a little bit about how you have adapted when you've had those obstacles, how you've adapted to those challenges. Because I think what's really fantastic about entrepreneurs is that you're problem solvers. You're people who, things get thrown your way and you find a way around it, you find a way to overcome. And talking a little bit more about that, I think would help in challenging that, that fear of risk that people have.
I guess the biggest way we've adapted is we set up as a retail business originally, and our customer was bankers, lawyers, core retail women. Managing to grow, because I don't have a retail background, I didn't even know how to make clothes. I didn't really know how difficult that was going to be, which is probably a good thing, otherwise you'd never do it. But about 3 years in, we were really struggling and just couldn't find a way of acquiring customers quick enough, and we sort of by accident ended up starting to do corporate uniforms, which was not what I ever wanted to do, not what I set out to do, but we quite quickly realised that having a kind of second string to our bow as a small business, it actually made all the difference for us. I mean, and we still have 30% of our revenue is still corporate uniforms. We keep it a bit quiet because it's not as cool as having a fashion label. Dips in the economy that we've had, especially over the last few years, that kind of slow but steady corporate uniform business has seen us through those. So.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, no, I obviously had over a decade in one of the most competitive industries in the world, professional football, where every young boy wants to become a professional footballer. So I was fortunate enough to have a career within that industry, and what that taught me was that at the very top level, when you play in the Premier League, and I played for over a decade in the Premier League, there's 200 players at any given time in the whole world that are playing at that level. That's elite sport and it's extremely competitive, but moving into the business world and looking at SMEs across the board, you are actually as an SME in that elite spectrum as well, and so it's okay that it's competitive. It's not meant to be easy. It's extremely challenging. And I think actually communicating that, owning that and understanding that is an important step for SMEs, because that's where you realise that you're playing with the best. So for us now, we've just launched into Sainsbury's, into Holland and Barrett. So we're now sat on shelf. Our turmeric shots are sat on shelf against, the big boys. And we're stealing shelf from those, large corporates, blue chips within the food and beverage industry. And so for us, we have to really understand that it's not meant to be easy because it's a very competitive industry, but actually acknowledging that and owning that is a really important step for any SME, because it makes you get on with it and it makes you look at the opportunities to ultimately compete at that level.
All right. So I'm going to ask one final question before we open up to questions from the audience. I'll start with you, Thomas. It's the same question to both of you. What do you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting out in business?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, again, we're fundamentally products of our environment. So my environment, again, I'll reference back to sport. And within sport, you have to play in a team, when you play professional football or rugby or hockey or whatever it is. And so even individual sports such as tennis, you still have a team, your backroom staff, your physiotherapists, everyone. And so stepping into the business world, it took me probably 1 or 2 years to really understand that actually it is exactly the same. You are only as good as the individual standing next to you. And actually when you have the right individuals within your organisation and the right individuals in the right seats within your organisation, that's when you begin to flourish. So I would say, a real emphasis on team, knowledge, skill, and being able to transfer that into the business to apply that knowledge to make it effective is key. And that's what we're beginning to see now.
Louis?
For us, international growth, without a doubt, which is ridiculously something I just ignored for years and years. And I was so focused on growing our customer base here. I just didn't really think about it. And actually, it did genuinely take a conversation with DBT for me to think, why are we not doing this? We were spending a lot on our social ads here and our Google ads here. We do hundreds of thousands of catalogues here, and we just never tried to do them abroad. In the last couple of years, we've really changed that, and it took the tiniest tweak on our website. I always thought we'd have to Yes, and it literally took me, I think, 2.5 minutes
Wow.
to turn that on. And why didn't I do that years ago? And now that revenue stream is really, really helping us, again, especially as it's been a little challenging here recently. That's really helped us, so growing internationally.
Thank you both. And now questions from the audience. They can be to any of us. The gentleman in the middle. Sorry, the lights are very bright, so I may not see you. Please keep your hands up. Yes. If there's a microphone going that way.
I could project this, it's fine. My question was about the disconnect between education and the world of business. We talked about young people and the attitudes that they bring to work. What can we do to connect our business and education strategies so we've got more career-aware people and more work-ready people coming into the workplace to support the apprenticeship programs?
It's a great question. So in case people didn't hear the question, it was about making sure, how do we make sure that we get people more career ready, especially around apprenticeships. I think that as much as possible, business going into schools is really important. But don't just focus on the students, also focus on the teachers. We often forget about the teachers and just talk to the students, but the teachers are often, they're often an interloper in terms of giving young people advice about what the workplace is going to be like, what they need, what skills that the pupils need are often determined by the bias of the teachers that they have at those schools. When I go out in my constituency and speak to students, they often tell me that, oh, well, my teacher said this, and it's very different what teachers' experience of the workplace is actually from what local businesses' experiences are. So yes, having apprenticeships starting as early as possible, because not everybody is going to go to university, getting them in to work, getting them used to what work is like is important. I think COVID in particular has had a very, very bad effect in terms of what people expect from a working environment. Working from home as well means that lots of people don't have those interactions, which they would, those social interactions where they would pick up many of the skills that you get almost by osmosis from being in the workplace. So we've got to work harder on that. The government has a skills agenda very focused on T levels as well as A levels, so that the things that employers need are being taught to young people, not just the academic skills that are good for exams and good for getting into university, but actually aren't that practical. But it's got to be a partnership between government, and not just national government, but also local government, schools and business. And I think that will help in terms of getting a generation career ready for the workplace, not just for getting their degrees and diplomas. Thank you. Yes, the lady in the front, please.
Hello, my name is Sandra Murphy. I'm the CEO of Equidite UK Limited. Yeah. I created the world's first liquid feed for horses, and I'm the 9th black woman in the history of the UK to get a patent. And I go into schools as well, and I try and inspire young people. But I live in Lincolnshire, and the demographic in Lincolnshire means that there's very few ethnic minorities represented in that county. And there is a fact that less than 0.3% of black women get funding in the UK. Is there any sort of initiative there for women? I know there's one for women, but being a black woman in industry as well, and especially the industry that I'm in, which is predominantly very white middle class industry in equine, is there any campaigns or anything out there specifically to help black women to get funding in rural areas?
Thank you. And I know what you mean. So I represent a constituency that is about 98% white, and yet people there voted for me. I look completely different from the average person walking down the street in Saffron Walden in Essex. So no, we don't have any specific ethnicity-based support programs, but that is for a particular reason. There is a very clear need when you look at women in particular in the workplace versus men. It's very simple. It's quite binary. There's a lot of data and a lot of evidence. With ethnicity, there's a whole spectrum. There's lots of different people. And we had a report that came out about a year or two ago called Inclusive Britain. And there's a program in there about inclusion at work, What we are trying to do is make sure that people face attitudes that are better rather than, and that will help in terms of things like access to finance and so on. I personally, and I say this not just as the business secretary, but also as the equalities minister, worry that if we divide people into too many groups at some point, it stops being about helping people overcome discrimination and actually just about which group is getting which pot of money. So no, the government doesn't prioritise based on race, but we do look at circumstances which would impact you. What you will have in common with a lot of people is not just being an ethnic minority, but perhaps a niche business that a lot of people don't understand, trying to talk to people who might have a different background from yours. That's why things like the schemes that we have through the British Business Bank, they are tailored for people who will fall into those categories, irrespective of their ethnic background or their social class. It's amazing how often we find people talking about the difficulty they have in communicating the value of their business to people who don't have experience of it. I think it is a genuine challenge, and there is support out there. If you look at our Help to Grow website, the Prime Minister mentioned great.gov.uk. That's very much about exporting, but our Help to Grow website will have things that will help you, irrespective of what your business is and what your background is as well. So please, I'm sure we've got staff in the room as this session, but please afterwards do ask us and we'll be able to provide you with more information. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, there's a gentleman right up there at the end. Sorry, I am trying to see. I'm blinded.
Good morning, Ian O'Donnell from the Federation of Small Businesses. Great to hear the announcement about apprenticeship funding for SMEs, but two things. One, which is, how do we encourage the sort of second and third career who need to retrain to be able to get access to funding to allow them to retrain into a new career to access workforce of the future, not just from the younger workforce? And secondly, many SMEs, while it's not just about the cost of training, but the cost of onboarding that person in a small business, and making sure those apprenticeships are fit for the niche needs of that business. We've just heard from a very niche business there. So how do we continue that drive forward to make the apprenticeship system as flexible as possible and appropriate to all ages to be able to access for our future workforce needs?
So it's a very good point. We all think of apprentices as 16, 17-year-olds who've never done a day's work in their lives. But in the fast-moving economic environment that we're in, people do need to retrain. As far as I'm aware, the apprenticeship levy and the schemes that we have do cover people who are mid-career. It may be that perhaps we're not advertising that as much as we possibly can do. I'd be keen to find out a little bit more about some of the examples which you are referring to. But it is absolutely the case that if you are somebody who has been in a career for a long time, there do tend to be perceptions about what you can or cannot do. It's one of the reasons why we're very focused on the skills program, Help to Grow, because many of the people who are looking to a second career won't necessarily just be going to work in someone else's company. They'll be looking to start on their own, just as Libby and Thomas were talking about. So we want to make sure that the suite of support that we're giving is going to work irrespective of who you are, how old you are, which part of the country you're in. But we also need feedback as well. One of the things that I find as a government minister is that people assume that we know every single thing that's going on about every single aspect of all of your different industries and sectors. We don't. We need you. That's why we have conferences like these. Don't assume that we know everything. We know what you tell us. We try and solve some things. If they're not working, if the scheme is not what you think it would be, let us know. Sometimes we may be able to change it. Sometimes we won't. But there'll be good reasons for that, and we'll try and communicate that as well so that everyone can see what the pathway is for continuous improvement and learning throughout their life as well. Thank you. The gentleman up there, and then the one at the end. I think we've got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm Andy Slee. I represent SEBA. We're 700 10,000 people. Half of our members last year applied for finance to grow their businesses. 40% of those were turned down due to COVID debt or COVID losses. What's available to add much needed capital into what is a British manufacturing success story.
Right, thank you. So this is something that we are acutely aware of. We've had a recovery loan scheme specifically for this scenario which you have described. COVID did a lot of damage to businesses across the country, and it also made many banks actually just more risk averse. It was very hard to tell who was a bad business versus who was a business that was affected by COVID. We've actually renamed the recovery loan scheme. Kevin, remind me.
Growth Guarantee Scheme. Yes,
the Growth Guarantee Scheme. I've still got the old name in my head, because we don't want to label businesses as all being in recovery. We want to move on from the COVID period. The Growth Guarantee Scheme is one example of the funding that is available. But the £660 million that we announced today, I know it's Northern Powerhouse money, but it is again something that we're doing to tackle just that problem which you have described. You know, we're sitting in an advanced manufacturing centre. I'm the minister responsible for industrial policy. Manufacturing is the backbone of this country. It has been for a long time. And we've got a great story to tell. We've overtaken France to become the 7th largest manufacturing country in the world. So good things are happening, but they're happening because we're not being complacent about them. And that means looking after those businesses like yours, or like the ones you described, pardon me, which are having a really difficult time. I've also mentioned previously some of the schemes that the British Business Bank has on offer in terms of providing access to finance, and I hope that that will recover. I've just got time for one more question. I'll take the gentleman over there, and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, my name's Byron Dixon. I'm the CEO of Microfresh. We're an antimicrobial brand, and I'll make this quick because I know we're short on time. But you can see our name in things like John Lewis bedding with Microfresh technology. It'll last longer, bacteria can't grow. I've got two questions. One is access to government contracts. I think for SMEs, it's an easy way for the government to grow the economy, and that's either as a Tier 1 or Tier 2 supplier. In our case, I'm talking about mould, especially in MOD homes. And the other one is a question for Libby, is what is this 2.5-minute tweet you made to your website to sell it to the US?
I'll let Libby go first, because I think that will be shorter, and then I will come in on government contracts.
Shopify Markets. If anyone has a Shopify website and hasn't turned on the Shopify Markets button, I would recommend you do it immediately on your mobile. It literally takes, you can install Shopify Markets. In fact, it might already be pre-installed in anyone with a Shopify website. And there's literally a little toggle that you turn on, and then you select your countries you want to sell in, and Shopify makes it really easy. And then immediately you have a version of your website that shows in dollars or euros or whatever currency you choose.
Oh. I did not know that, so that is a good tip, thank you. And on the government procurement expert, but I do know that there is a tendency, and people certainly feel this, that it's the same companies that get the same business over and over and over again. And we are trying to open it up. We had a procurement bill go through Parliament. Since we left the EU, we've been able to make changes to some rules. We also did some work on the inclusion programme, which we talked about, which was about getting those businesses that don't get a look into government contracts and tendering, providing support, providing help, because we want the diversity of supply. We need that plurality. If it's the same companies doing everything, it actually builds a lot of systemic risk. There's a specific example that you have. My staff who are at the conference can pick up with you separately. I don't know very much about what is happening at the MOD. I think I understood your question correctly. But we might be able to give you more advice on how you can learn more about the system, how the process works, in order to make sure that small businesses can actually get a look in, and it's not just the big, large corporates who do all of the delivery, because that's not good for the business environment generally. It's not good for starting up and scaling up. We need as many people as possible getting involved in government contracts. They bring a lot of intelligence and understanding, which helps us make things better generally. Thank you. All right, I think we're going to wrap up at this point. I'm handing over to Kevin Hollenrig. Thank you, everyone, so much.